So this year's Russian election will be one of, if not the most important in Putin's political career. Like any authoritarian leader, Putin requires a strong display of support in order to signal his legitimacy. Therefore, a victory in this election means that Putin can claim that his mandate has been renewed, both to domestic and international audiences, and in turn it kind of suggests that he can claim that the entire Russian population endorses his decision-making. And this is especially important this year. Putin no doubt has a number of difficult choices to have to make, some of which will certainly be incredibly unpopular with Russian ordinary folk, who are living currently in increasingly deteriorating living conditions as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Western sanctions, and Russia's subsequent pivot to a war economy. The outcome of this election is practically a certainty, but most likely going to be the most manipulated election to date. This has already been evidenced through the rather meagre selection of opposition candidates standing against Putin, providing the Russian public with weak alternatives to him, while the real Russian opposition has been pushed out of the race entirely. Therefore, we can expect official reports to suggest an overwhelming level of support for Putin with an equally high voter turnout. And this in turn will allow Putin to justify the continuation of the conflict in Ukraine, as well as practically any facet of Russian security or foreign policy for the foreseeable future. We can expect, therefore, in order to galvanise public support, Putin to continue his rhetoric, or in fact to increase focus not only on patriotic elements about your duty to vote, but also on how the West constitutes an existential threat to Russian security. Despite how Russians do actually decide to vote, we can expect the results to be doctored in order to fit this narrative and also to fit Putin's authoritarian requirements.
Okay.
Now, everyday Russians have very restricted access to mass media. They are able to see what is crafted by the Russian state, and therefore, similar to other states that are heavily repressed by the media, they are unable to form a full comprehensive picture. While from an external point of view, we can see these elections for what they are, for a domestic audience, these elections may very well seem legitimate. Now, there are evidently a number of people who do not agree with Putin. This has been evidenced through the support for opposition candidates such as Boris Nadezhdin and Ekaterina Duntseva. Ultimately, this means that this result will be tailored in order to look realistic enough to be accepted by the Russian population. As we might expect throughout this election cycle, the Russian opposition has been quite comprehensively gutted. The withdrawal of opposition candidates such as Ekaterina Duntseva and Boris Nadezhdin suggests that while an anti-war platform can generate significant support within certain parts of Russian society, it is still not permissible as a subject of debate within Russian political discourse. And of course, following the death of Alexei Navalny, the Russian opposition has lost its symbolic leader, leaving it in a rather fragmented position with conflicting views on how best to shape Russia's political future. From the reaction to Navalny's funeral, we can see that there is definitely a cosmopolitan liberal group of Russians who do not agree with the war, who do not agree with Putin, and desire some kind of change within Russia. In terms of figures who can replace Navalny, that is yet to be seen, and that is why we need to pay particular attention to how events evolve over the course of this weekend's elections. The scale of Russian domestic discontent is a critical indicator, not only to assess how much Putin is in control of Russian society, but also how figures such as Yulia Navalnaya are able to galvanize support within Russia. And ultimately, this election does serve as a fantastic predictive tool in assessing the potential future of Russian politics over the next 6 years.